Hi everyone, so today Tommy will be showing you how to make two different kinds of vegan sushi. This is part 2 of our sushi videos. The first roll he'll be showing you is the carrot lox sushi, and the second one is a crispy tofu roll. And so make sure you keep watching so you can learn how to make it. And afterwards, Chestnut and I will taste test which one we like better.
So we start off with cooked rice, and we put the cooked rice on top of a piece of parchment paper, and underneath that parchment paper there is a towel with paper towel to absorb some of the extra vinegar when we are spreading our rice, so it allows it to cool down. So when we're spreading our rice, we want to make sure we spread it in a way that makes it evenly spread across on the baking sheet and allows it to cool evenly. I'm just slowly adding the vinegar to the rice instead of dumping it all at once, so it gives it a more even coating for all the rice. So once we finish spreading our rice on the sheet, what I'm going to start doing is flipping the rice over. So the rice that has been in most contact with the vinegar is flipped on top of the rice, so it's not soaked in the vinegar. Then we're gonna spread it out one more time. Once we finish spreading out the rice and we allow the rice to cool down, we're just gonna cover it so it doesn't get dry, and we're gonna prep all rest of our ingredients for our carrot lox roll and our tofu roll. Next, we're gonna prep our avocados. First, we're gonna peel and skin our avocado, and we're gonna slice it into segments. We wanna make our avocado slices as evenly as possible because that's gonna allow our sushi roll to really have that balance of flavor in each roll. Instead of cutting it directly from the top, what I generally try to do is cut it from on a bias, so it allows for a more even cut. And if we start in the middle, it works better, so it's better for us to space how big a segment should be. In this video, I won't show you how to cook the carrot lox or the tofu, but I will demonstrate how to roll these ingredients in a row. So we're gonna take the rough side up first on our seaweed. We want to make sure our surface is clean while we're working. We just want just enough rice to cover the seaweed, and there's gonna be a little bit gaps poking through the rice. So it's roughly 1.5 scoops, give or take. I find that the less rice you use, the better it's gonna taste. The reason why behind using less rice is because when you eat the sushi, when it has an overwhelming amount of rice ratio compared to filling, it's not going to really taste the same as you'd get in your typical Japanese restaurant. So we're just trying to spread the rice as evenly as possible on the seaweed. The more even we get, the better the roll is going to be. We want to make sure we have enough rice to cover our seaweed. So a very typical dressing for sushi rice is sesame seeds, but in this situation where I'm using carrot lox, I prefer to use a everything bagel seasoning. I find that it adds really great flavor to the sushi roll, not only in texture and that little extra bit of saltiness with garlic adds immense amount of flavor to the roll. Now I'm adding the avocado to the roll. You want to use the softest ingredients closest towards you, and as we see that this avocado was slightly too big, so I'm just gonna slice it a little bit thinner so it matches the other pieces more evenly. Then using 3 pieces of avocado, 2 one way, then flip the other one the other way. Then I'm adding my smoked carrot lox, and as you can see, it's already brown because I pan fried it again, so it allows that smoky flavor to even develop more deeply. So we're gonna add chipotle mayo now. this is my homemade chipotle mayo, my signature blend that I make myself. Now once we have all ingredients in the roll, we're gonna start rolling our sushi roll. The first step when we're rolling it, we will kind of want to compress our ingredients together so it allows us to form that very traditional roll. As I'm pulling the mat back, I'm kind of squishing it so it kind of allows the rice to form its shape, and I'm just pressing down ever so gently. We don't want to squeeze the sushi because the rice will lose its shape. We just want to make sure we're squeezing, just a gentle press to form it together. And every time I'm pulling the sheet back, I'm applying a little bit of pressure and just tightening the rolls. Now, to get that really tight form at the very end of the roll, we pull our sushi roll onto the edge and we wet our hands and we press on the edge so it's allowing the sushi to form its shape. And we do the same thing on this side. We wet our hands again and we start pressing the end of the roll to really have that tight fit at the end. Now, once we've formed our shape, then we're gonna hold the roll and pull back just to tighten it one more time. And as it's tightened, we're good to go, and we're gonna start preparing to cutting it. So we will absolutely want to be sure to have a really sharp knife, and what's essential with a knife is we have a wet cloth so that we can wipe our knife with while we're cutting our sushi. So it allows the blade to be clean and slightly damp, so it's a little bit easier to cut. So we want to make sure we get everything ready. I'm just pressing it down so it flattens the bottom a little bit. Now we're ready to cut. I'm going to slice once in the middle. You kind of want to do in a sawing motion so the rice doesn't stick to it. As we can see, we just sliced it, and now I'm going to run my knife at the bottom of it. So when we lift up the rice doesn't stick to the bottom and damage our roll. So the way to cut sushi rice is we cut it in half first, and we're gonna cut those halves into halves, then those halves into halves again. That allows us to have as even pieces as possible, but we warn, doing this with a dull knife is near impossible. So we always want to make sure our knife is clean when cutting our sushi, and when we lift up our sushi, we always make sure we run our knife across the bottom so it allows the sushi rice to be released from the cutting board. So now we're gonna start plating our sushi roll. We're just gonna take it 2 by 2, putting it cut side down so we have nice and even pieces so it looks nice. Then we're gonna start preparing to make our next sushi roll, which is a tofu roll with avocados. This roll is also good with fresh mango if it's in season. So when we're working, we also want to make sure we work as clean as possible. So you can see me wiping down my rolling mat, then looking for the rough side to be faced up, wetting my fingers before I touch the sushi rice. You don't want them too wet, but you want them damp so the rice doesn't stick. So another 1.5 cups of rice that we put onto our seaweed, then wetting our heads again, spreading it evenly, then we're spreading the rice as even as possible. Another useful tip when we're new to rolling sushi, we want to cover our rice between each roll, because if we allow our rice to dry out too much, it's just gonna get harder and harder to roll, so it makes rolling much more difficult. So we're spreading our rice just like how we did earlier, and once we get an even layer, this time I'm gonna use shredded pork. This ingredient is found typically in Asian grocery stores. You may have it in your local neighborhood, but if you don't, feel free to just use sesame seeds or everything bagel seasoning. I find that the shredded pork adds a good amount of sweetness, saltiness, and a little bit of texture for the sushi roll. Now we flip it because we're doing an outside roll. Now we're gonna add our crispy tofu. This is also an ingredient that I bought from my local store. You can use any kind of fish alternative like gardine. So we will always want to add our soft ingredient on the closest to us, so it allows us to roll the sushi roll a little easier. Now we've added our avocado, our tofu. A good alternative that you can use instead of this vegan tofu fish is tofu puffs. Just make sure you air fry them so they get nice and crispy before you put them in the roll. So we're doing exactly what we did before. We're just tightening the roll, and as we're pulling the roll back, we're squeezing it so it allows its shape to form. And we're gonna tuck in the sides like before with damping our fingers and pressing into the sides so it forms that nice shape. The reason why I use a tofu puff or a crispy fish is that when we're eating the sushi, it allows the roll to have a little bit more texture than you'll typically have. It'll kind of simulate something more similar to a tempura roll. So when we were rolling sushi, we always want to make sure we want to try to get it as tight as possible so it allows for easier cutting. As you can see how many times I actually really tighten the roll. Now I'm going to press the roll down so it forms shape and it allows a more flatter bottom for ease of cutting. I wet my knife again and clean it. Then now I'm just going to slice it just like how we did earlier in halves. Then I'm going to halve those half, cleaning between each slice. Knife's clean. I'm going to run my knife below the roll so it releases from the cutting board. Clean my knife again, and we're going to slice those halves into halves again, and those halves into halves once more again. Clean my knife each time I use it. This way we ensure to get the most even pieces by slicing halves into halves. And every time I lift up my sushi, I just want to stress to run your knife on the bottom of it so it allows for no rice to be stuck to the cutting board. So that's done. Now I'm going to start plating our tofu roll onto our plate. I find that these long plates look nice, but if you don't have them, a circle plate would just do as fine, or even a cutting board looks beautiful. So what makes this carrot lox roll so good is that the carrots really have a smoky flavor to them, and the crispy tofu acts almost like a yam tempura. So now we're going to get into the taste test.
Okay, so now it's time to eat. Just that, sit. So which one should we try first?
Let's try the carrot lox first.
Okay, let's try that. It tastes like smoked salmon roll.
Well, the avocado adds quite a bit of creaminess to it. It's quite good.
Just not sit. Okay, I'm gonna try this one. And what do you have on the outside?
Shredded pork. And on the outside of this one, we have everything in bagel seasoning.
Good job. Yeah, so like, subscribe to our channel so you can watch part 3, which is what?
We'll be making Inari Sushi. It's gonna be a more complex sushi recipe. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Chestnut, you should go on the table.
No, it's not what the table's for.
Chestnut, sit. Sit.
Be like cooking with the
Good
dog.
girl. Oh, good girl. Good girl. Leave it. Leave it. Leave it. Good girl. Who's a star? Are you a celebrity?